Welcome to Hike Over the Hill. I am Jedi and I am about to show you an instructional video on how to make a rain cover for your Ursack. Now I already shot a video where I talked about the rain sack that I had made. I'll show that to you real quick here. That was made out of this Gossamer Gear pack liner. And I made, just a quick refresher for you, I put some reinforced tape in the bottom with some slits to protect the Ursack during the rain. But this weighs about 45 grams, 42 grams, something like that. Seemed a little bit heavy. It does have an advantage of being long enough that I can cinch it up around the bottom of the Ursack, because it's longer than the Ursack, so I can kind of close it off on the bottom so it doesn't blow around, but that may or may not be advantageous. So instead what I've discovered is if you get these things, these oven bags that are used for, roasting turkey or any kind of poultry really. They come 2 to a box. I think I paid $2.79 for this. So I'm going to get 2 rain sack covers for about $1.40 or maybe $1.50 with tax. So I'll put this aside now that you've seen that. And you want, by the way, you do want the turkey size. As you can see, you want the big one, the turkey size bag. And this is 19 inches by 23.5 inches, which is almost exactly the dimensions of the Ursack. The Ursack's, I think, 12 inches wide by 22 inches long. So it's very, very close to the Ursack. And by the way, that's the Ursack Major XL that I'm making this for. In fact, I'll show it to you here. You pull out my Major XL, which is here. I've done a little spray paint design to further identify it as mine, but you can see this is about 22 inches long roughly and about 1 foot wide. So before I do anything, I'm going to measure the distance between the 2 cords where they come out. I know it's a little hard to see because it's black, but maybe I'll show you a little close up here. You can see the cords coming out there. I want to measure that distance between where those cords emerge, basically. And you don't have to be exact. In fact, on my other one, I think I did it at 1.5 inches. I made the cuts. This is about 1 3/4, maybe 2 inches. So maybe I'll split the difference. You can kind of eyeball it. It doesn't have to be perfect. We'll set the Ursack aside. We're not going to need that for the rest of this. You are going to need, of course, the oven sack I just showed you. You're going to need some reinforced tape. This is that, you can see the nylon strands running through there. So you want this reinforced tape. Get a roll of that. You want some kind of a box cutter, a razor blade, something like this. You can make very sharp cuts with a nice sharp pointy blade. And you need a pair of scissors. Now, this pair of scissors, these are actually special scissors that I bought to cut Dyneema composite fabric because I was doing a project with Dyneema composite fabric. And they have serrated teeth on one side, and you can feel it. You run your finger down, you can feel the little teeth. That's really critical for cutting Dyneema composite fabric or Kevlar or certain substances that are very slippery that'll just slip through other scissors. These work amazingly well, very sharp, and they will cut pretty much anything. I mean, there's nothing I found, within reason that these won't cut. So I'm going to use those to cut this tape just because it's got that nylon reinforcement in there. So the first thing we're going to do, this should be a fairly quick project. I'll try to take my time a little bit. I don't want to rush. I don't want you having to keep pausing the video. I'm going to lay it out so that the bottom is right here. And as you can see, I've already made a little mark with a Sharpie, the little black mark right there, just marking the center. You don't have to have it perfect. I like things to be, exact. I'm a little bit anal retentive that way, I guess. A little bit of a perfectionist. So now I know where my center is. I'm going to cut off a piece of tape, maybe about 3 inches long. Again, doesn't have to be perfect. If you want, you can measure it. I'm going to pretty much eyeball it, more or less. I'm going to cut a piece of tape about that long, okay? So maybe, as long as your pinky finger or so. Okay, I'm going to take that. I'm going to go ahead and cut it with my special scissors here. That's the only problem with these scissors is the blades are kind of short. So it might take 2 cuts to get across the piece of tape like this. So I'm going to take that tape, and because this bag is not gusseted, it's just a flat bag. It's got that just plain old sealed bottom. I'm just going to lay that tape right right below the seam, right below my little mark, kind of centering that tape right below that mark. So there we go. I've got my first layer of tape right there like that. Okay. Now I need to turn the bag inside out. Turn the bag inside out because I need to put another layer of tape on the inside. That's just for extra reinforcement, so that there's reinforcement on both sides of the bag, because I don't want to give those cuts any opportunity to run and to pull through the bag. Okay, so just another strip of tape. It's going to be the same length. Again, you can measure it if you want. I'm going to eyeball it. This bag is being difficult. It doesn't have to be completely turned inside out. You just need to get to the part where you put the tape. So mine is right here. So I'm going to cut another piece of tape and put it exactly on top of this one on the inside of the bag. So I'll take my tape again, find the edge, peel that back, and kind of eyeball it here. I'll hold it up to the piece I laid down, kind of say, yeah, it's about the same length right there. Take my scissors, my serrated scissors, cut that piece, the new piece. Okay, now I've got my extra piece of tape that's going right on top of the other piece I put on the outside of the bag. So this is on the inside of the bag. So there we go. I'm going to press that down, smooth it down, nice and smooth. So we got that good to go. All right, so let's turn the bag back right side in. Get it the way it's designed to be used. Get it all nice and flattened out here. Now for this part, you're going to need something that you can cut on, because you don't want to cut all the way through the bag. You just want to cut through that layer of tape. And of course, you know, the other side of the bag is over here. So I happen to have a piece of hard rubber flooring here that's left over from when I put down some rubber flooring in our basement to make a little workout area so that, you know, we could exercise on it and we wouldn't hurt ourselves, because it's a concrete floor down here and that's not comfortable to kneel on and sit on and lay on and so on. So I've got my little backing here. Now what you're going to do is, if you have a Sharpie, you can do it. I'll use a Sharpie just so you can see for illustrative purposes. I'm going to get my tape measure out again. And I'm going to measure, and I'm going to pick about 1.5 inches apart for these two marks. So my piece of tape here is about 2 3/4 inches. So let's see, if I had planned this ahead a little better, I could have made the marks a little more precise, but that's okay. Like I said, it doesn't have to be perfect. So I'm going to mark about right here, and then again right about here. That's about 1.5 inches. And again, as I said, it doesn't have to be perfect. You can be 1 3/4 inches, you can be 2 inches. You don't want to be too narrow though, because you don't want those cords coming out and then pulling away from each other because the cords come out of the bag. You want these slits to be pretty close to where the cords come out of the bag. Okay, so that when you tie it around the tree, the cords aren't fighting with this bag and putting tension on the bag, these cuts that you've made. So now that I have my cuts that you can see here, I'm going to take my razor, my box cutter, and I'm just going to make a small cut. I'm going to turn it this way actually, so it makes it a little bit easier, so I can cut this way instead of having to try to cut that way. So I'm just going to lay this little cutter down, and I'm going to cut about a 1/2 inch cut and stop. And then I'm going to do it the same thing on the other mark that I made, about a 1/2 inch, and then stop. I'm going to put my knife away. Done with that. I'm done with my scissors, and I'm done with my little rubber block here, because I am completely done with this project. That's it. That's all there is to it. And I'll just take my Ursack here very quickly, and I'll slip it into the sack. And I should have put like a pillow in it or something to kind of puff it up and make it look like, you know, it had something in it. But we'll just do it with an empty Ursack. It's fine, just for illustrative purposes. Pulling through first cord, through the first slit, and the second cord through the second slit. Make sure you don't have the bag in the way there. I was trying to push it through the bag, and that's not going to work. All right. This will also make sure that, you know, your cuts were long enough and that they actually made it all the way through the tape and you didn't skip a spot, anything like that. So now, pull that through, pull those cords through so that they're all the way through the slit. So now I got my bag on my Ursack. Let me pull it all the way down so you can kind of see how it compares lengthwise. So it's all the way down. You can see it ends right here. So if I hold this bag up and it's hanging off a tree, that bag is the rain sack is just going to cover the bottom edge. And it's a bit wider than the Ursack, as you can see too. You can see the Ursack is kind of in there. There's a few inches of material here, and there's a few inches of bag material here. But it fits reasonably well. It's cheap at $1.50 per bag. It's pretty strong stuff, I think. It's lightweight. I weighed this. In fact, I'll weigh it right now for you while we're doing this. I weighed it before I put the tape on, and it weighed 14 grams, 1.4 grams, so half an ounce. Versus my other bag that was the Gossamer Gear pack liner, that was 42 ounces or something like that. So more than twice as heavy. Of course, that one also had the tape on it. So now I got to do it on this one. Now that I have the tape on it, so I'm gonna roll this up. I'll get my scale here. I'm going to grab a little rubber band, a little tiny one. By the way, these are great. These are little rubber bands that you use when you have braces. Little tiny. I don't know if you can even see it. A little tiny yellow rubber band there. I'm going to put this around here. This will just make it easier for me to weigh it on the scale. And these rubber bands are, the weight of them is negligible. I'm going to grab my little scale here. Got my scientific scale. Let's open it up, turn it on. All right. Set it down. All right. We're at 0. Here we go. That is 15.12 grams. Pick it up. 0. 15.11 grams. So just a shade over 15 grams. So about a half an ounce. You have a rain cover for your Ursack versus the other one I made that I showed you in the other video, the Gossamer Gear pack liner version, which is longer, as I said, and you can bunch it up at the bottom to really completely seal the Ursack off. That one is about maybe an ounce and a half. So an ounce and a half versus half an ounce. So you save almost an ounce. So anyway, that's my tip to you. I hope you enjoyed it, and happy hiking. Hopefully we'll see you on the trail. Bye, guys.